What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie The History of Sound. Here's a quick synopsis. In 1917, at the New England Conservatory of Music, student Lionel Worthing begins a whirlwind romance with fellow classmate David White. 2 years later, David invites Lionel to join him on a trip collecting folk songs. The film stars Paul Mescal, Josh O'Connor, Hadley Robinson, Emma Canning, Molly Price, and Chris Cooper. Standout performances. For many critics, this is what they would deem a performance right in Paul Mescal's wheelhouse, the idea being that the actor thrives in smaller indies like After Sun and All of Us Strangers, more so than in big blockbusters like Gladiator 2. And I get what they are saying, though I think he's very good in Gladiator 2. The danger here is saying he's doing the same thing in these movies. The performances he's giving are far more varied than given credit for being. Yes, in this movie, Mescal is once again part of a doomed romance, but there's also a cruelness to this character. He just all of a sudden rejects people with little to no explanation. He's complicated and darker than the other characters the actor has played. In The History of Sound, Mescal plays Lionel Worthing, an aspiring musician who is trying to get away from farm life, and I walked away impressed. He's getting better with each movie. That's the thing that gets overlooked about this actor. He's still early in his career and is making the right career choices. And speaking of those choices, he's going to play one of the most famous musicians of all time, Paul McCartney, as part of 4 Beatles movies being made by director Sam Mendes. It's a giant task for Mescal, but if he can pull it off, his career will no doubt skyrocket to a whole nother level. He also has the movie Hamnet coming out this month, and that has major Oscar buzz. Josh O'Connor, like Mescal, has had a similar rise, beginning with a television show, The Crown, and with film performances in Emma, Lee, and Challengers. I'm a fan, but I have to admit, I don't love him in this movie. I don't think he's given a whole lot to do. It's not the two-hander it was advertised as. In The History of Sound, he plays David White, who travels collecting music and shows some signs of jealousy towards Worthing because of his musical talent. O'Connor can currently be seen in Kelly Reichardt's The Mastermind and is going to be in Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, and he's going to be in the next film from Steven Spielberg. I believe he's a great actor. The History of Sound just wasn't his best. And that gets me to this. I was expecting this movie to be the ultimate two-hander, but it's ultimately Paul Mescal's movie and works best when it becomes his movie. The beginning is only there to get us to the emotional stakes of the second half. And I know some critics feel the exact opposite, that the first half is better. I just don't see it that way. The movie is at its best when it's a Paul Mescal showcase. But the hype around this movie, if there ever was any, was about seeing these two actors on the rise star in the same movie. Seeing Paul Mescal paired with Josh O'Connor, that's what people were excited for. And I think if that's what you were excited for, this movie isn't what you wanted it to be. The consensus appears to be that this movie, The History of Sound, was not worthy of these two actors, and I agree to that to a certain point. I don't think this movie is worthy of Josh O'Connor, but it is of Paul Mescal because it gives him the emotional arc of the movie. He is the true lead of this film in a way that I was really surprised by. It's interesting to think about these two actors and wonder which one of them is going to be the bigger movie star, because Paul Mescal has had his chance in a big movie in Gladiator 2, and that film received mixed results. I mean, some people really do love it, and others say that Paul Mescal was the problem of that movie. I am not one of those people. I thought he gave a really solid leading man performance in that film. I'm just curious to see how many more big movies Paul Mescal is going to want to be a part of. Like, I don't see this as an actor who's going to be in a Marvel movie anytime soon. He's not going to be in James Gunn's DC universe. I want to see him work with bigger directors like Christopher Nolan and those types. Josh O'Connor, on the other hand, had a huge success in Challengers. A lot of people saw that movie, and it is also a movie that a lot of people talked about, and a lot think that he was the best part of that film. And in the race to become a movie star, I think a lot of people would give the edge to O'Connor, but I'm not giving up on Paul Mescal. I still believe he is going to continue to grow as a leading man in bigger studio movies. So not that many people saw this movie in movie theaters. It made just about $1 million. And I really do wonder if this is going to be the case of a movie that people do see more over time because of the rise of these two actors. Like, are people going to go back in the filmography of Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor and say, I gotta go see that movie they did together? That's a positive way to look at this movie. A negative way to look at it is these two actors have been on the rise. There was some internet chatter about this movie, but there was not enough excitement for two people who have the potential to be movie stars. I feel like I talk about this a lot on this podcast. Moviegoers are no longer invested in the careers of actors. Yes, cinephiles are. People like me are excited about the next movie starring Paul Mescal, but people do not follow an actor's career in the way that they used to. Just because Josh O'Connor was good in Challengers does not mean the average moviegoer is going to see him in a movie like The History of Sound. I do want to get into the quality of the movie itself. I think it's a good movie, not a great movie. I think it's better than most people right now are giving it credit for being. Again, I really like Paul Mescal in this movie. He's doing something different. He has some really good scenes, but the biggest issue with the movie is that none of those scenes are the ones that he shares with Josh O'Connor. They're just not electric enough. There's something missing in those scenes, and that's probably the failure of the movie itself. It's a movie that's really only focused on one of the main characters, and that's Lionel. Like, it's not really about the character of David White, played by Josh O'Connor. It's just not. The first half of this movie I really felt like was a slow burn. I was really wondering, what are we building towards? And then during the second half, when it all became about Paul Mescal's character Lionel, that's when I really became invested in this movie. And like I said earlier, there are others who feel completely different than how I feel about this movie, that they think the movie only works when Paul Mescal is with Josh O'Connor. I just don't agree. I'm not saying that the two actors lack chemistry. I just think the scenes between them were underdeveloped, and this movie really is more interested in the second half of the film. Oscar chances. Because of the talent involved, I think a lot of people did take this movie seriously as a movie that could have been a major contender, that it possibly could have been another nomination for Paul Mescal and possibly the first for Josh O'Connor. Sadly, that is not going to be the case. This movie is not good enough to get Oscar nominations. I do believe we are talking about two actors who are going to get numerous nominations throughout their careers. Paul Mescal already has one. It sounds like he might get nominated again this year for Hamnet. I'm for sure guaranteeing that Josh O'Connor is going to get an Oscar nomination in the next 5 years or so. When talking about a movie about a love story between two men, the two most famous modern examples are Brokeback Mountain, starring the late great Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal, and Call Me By Your Name, starring Timothée Chalamet and Armie Hammer. And I bring those two movies up to say this: those are the movies that The History of Sound is going to be compared to fairly or not. I know I heard some interviews where Paul Mescal was saying this movie is not like Brokeback Mountain, and he's completely right. It is a different kind of movie. But The History of Sound is going to be compared to it because of that film's massive success and wide appeal. And there are some similarities in that film was an early success for both Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal. They were young actors on the rise. The same with The History of Sound. You have Paul Mescal, you have Josh O'Connor. Maybe this is going to turn into something big for them. Maybe they're going to get Oscar nominations like what happened with the actors in Brokeback Mountain. And I don't want to keep making the same point over and over again, but that film, Brokeback Mountain, was way more of a two-hander. Both Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal were given time to shine. That was just not the case with The History of Sound. This is clearly Paul Mescal's movie. And it's weird to say this. It's the best thing about the movie, and it's also the worst thing about the movie, because Mescal does rise to the occasion. He makes this movie an enjoyable watch. I really did enjoy the arc of that character, and I empathized with him. But the downside is it feels like Josh O'Connor was just completely wasted in this movie. He wasn't given a great moment, nor was he given a great backstory. I do want to talk more about these two actors becoming movie stars. I believe the key for both of them becoming movie stars is the caliber of directors that they work with. Paul Mescal has already worked with Sir Ridley Scott. He's working on a movie with Sam Mendes. Josh O'Connor has worked with Steven Spielberg, Rian Johnson. He's about to be making a movie with Joel Cohen. The best modern movie stars work with the best directors. Look at Leonardo DiCaprio, Timothée Chalamet. They are working with the best filmmakers in the world. Either one of those movies you make with that director is going to pop off in a very big way, or you're going to be one of the most consistent actors on the planet, and ultimately that will make you a movie star. There is a large amount of people that believe that Paul Mescal's race to becoming a movie star is over because they perceive Gladiator 2 to be a failure on the actor's part. But he could bounce back in a big way if he continues to make movies with big-time directors. My point is, Gladiator 2 was more of a beginning than it was of an ending. Paul Mescal is in the early stages of being a leading man in bigger movies. I think the real question is whether or not he wants to be in bigger studio movies, or does he just want to continue making smaller indies like The History of Sound. I could definitely see Paul Mescal becoming somebody like Ethan Hawke, who sometimes shows up in studio movies but is mostly in independent films. The big question regarding Josh O'Connor right now is he a leading man? I haven't seen The Mastermind yet. He's not the lead in the Steven Spielberg movie. Maybe he's the lead of the Joel Cohen movie. There have not been enough movies where he has been the sole lead of. I mean, in Challengers, he's with Zendaya and Mike Feist. I mean, are we talking about a guy who's mainly going to be a supporting actor, or is he going to be regarded as a leading man? I thought coming into this movie, The History of Sound, he was going to be given a leading performance, and he didn't because he's not a leading character. I would define him as a supporting actor in the movie The History of Sound. This was a movie that was announced in 2021 and did not come out until 2025 due to a multitude of reasons. I don't think it served these actors well that so many other films came out before this one. Like, I think this movie would have worked better if it was an earlier film for Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor, because you're watching this movie and you're comparing it to the other movies you've seen them in. You're watching this and you're going, Paul Mescal was better in Aftersun. Josh O'Connor was better in Challengers. These are young actors who are becoming victims of their own success. Like, if this was the first movie you've ever seen Paul Mescal or Josh O'Connor in, you're going to be impressed. But because I have a history of seeing them in other things, I'm just not as. Even though I'm saying I'm a fan of Paul Mescal in this movie, this is not going to go down as one of his better film performances. I think he's better in Gladiator 2 than he is in The History of Sound. And with Josh O'Connor, there's a couple movies in a row where the films themselves are just not using him right. And I'm not only talking about The History of Sound, I'm also talking about the movie Lee, where you watch those movies and you go, wow, they didn't really understand the actor that they had there, because they both didn't give him enough to do and didn't use him in the right way. When two young actors come together to make a movie like this, what you do is you ultimately compare the two of them. And I think many people would say that Paul Mescal makes a lot of the same kind of movies where he plays a sensitive character, and Josh O'Connor right now is getting a lot of credit for making different kinds of movies. And that's why I kind of think that Paul Mescal is the one who's going to end up being a leading man, while Josh O'Connor is going to be more of a character actor who can sometimes be the lead of a movie, but is mostly going to be in supporting roles. That's how I feel about these two actors right now. So many things could change in the coming years. I think there's going to be a point where these actors do something that really does surprise you. Like, it has been a while, I'll admit this, where Paul Mescal has done something that really surprised me. I think him agreeing to be in Gladiator 2 was a huge surprise. I'm just kind of waiting for that performance that makes me go, wow, I did not know that that actor had that in him. And the same goes for Josh O'Connor. Say what you want about Timothée Chalamet, but one of the main reasons he's having all of this success is because he is making those surprising moves, starring in the Dune franchise, playing Willy Wonka. People are talking about Marty Supreme already, getting an Oscar nomination for playing Bob Dylan. I'll mention the name Austin Butler as well, playing Elvis, being in a movie like The Bike Riders. Those are two actors who are making bold choices, and right now they're being rewarded for it, being called major movie stars, and the same may end up happening for both Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. Only time will tell. My hope is that one day these two characters reunite in another movie, and it is a major deal because both of them will hopefully be major stars at that point. As for how I feel about the movie overall, The History of Sound, it's above average. I did enjoy the movie, especially the second half. I'm just not sure what the reputation for this one is going to be in 5 to 10 years. Is this a movie that people are going to go back and watch and enjoy, or are they going to go, wow, this movie wasted the talents of Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor? That's really hard to do. When all's said and done, this is not going to be regarded as one of the best movies of either of their careers. I think the best is still yet to come for both Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. They have both made movies that I think are far better than The History of Sound. What I'm about to say is beyond obvious. It would have been far better for this movie to just be okay if the best scenes in this movie were the ones between Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor, because then people would be talking about this movie. They would be talking about the chemistry between these two actors. Instead, at least in the year 2025, it's a forgotten movie that has a good, not great performance by Paul Mescal. This is a movie that works far better as a character study than it does a romance. It's also worth noting that both of these actors have other movies in 2025 that way more people are talking about. This is the forgotten film for both of them in 2025, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because there was some online chatter regarding The History of Sound. People wanted to see these two actors together. And even somebody like me who likes this movie would call it a film that did not reach its full potential. We are not talking about a movie that was loved by audiences, and we are not talking about a movie that was loved by critics. Expectations for this movie were super high because it stars Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. We were all expecting something special, and instead we got something that I think is just okay. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I recommend you check out the movie The History of Sound. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, starring Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi, and Mia Goth. So tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.